to another edition of the Blue and Gold Gridiron Show this week, where we're continuing our in-season theme of tweaks that possibly you could get added in this week if it's something that you do conceptually. Our idea was we've got a short burst in season. I know guys are limited on time in the season, so we're super excited to have this week to have Coach Jason Ronquillo on the show. Coach, first I watched a bunch of stuff on Glacier, and I was like, wow, this guy's super sharp. Built a powerhouse program at Yelm. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly.
Yep, that's right.
State championship program there. Now is at Gilbert High School. Those of you longtime fans will remember we had Coach Brown on for one of our early episodes. Great football coach. And they are both doing wonderful things for the Tigers, who last year were in the state playoffs. And really impressive stuff they're doing over there at Gilbert, because Gilbert, I would say, and I mean this in the most complimentary of ways, is in what I would call the lion's den. And what I mean by that is there's, as we've talked about on the show before, there's such fierce competition with getting your kids, and Gilbert is surrounded by a lot of 6A powers. So the fact that they have taken Gilbert to already to the playoffs and are building the Tigers back into a power is really impressive stuff in my view. We're going to talk to Coach in just a second, but just a reminder, Blue and Gold Gridiron Show brought to you by School Funder. School Funder, the only online fundraising company in America that lets you keep all of the money your team raises. Coaches would never give away 20% of their wins, yet they constantly give away 20% of their proceeds in fundraising when they do not have to. Contact the good people at School Funder at schoolfundr.org and let them know the Blue and Gold Gridiron Show sent you, as it'll help the show. While you're helping the show, right now our viewership has done really well, I believe, but that subscription rate, we're trying to get that to climb. So right now, hit subscribe. It's absolutely free. You're not going to get any spam. You're not going to get anything. The only thing it's going to do is notify you when we have new episodes, which those of you that watch the show know we come out with new episodes every single Wednesday. All right, Coach, so like I said, in-season episode. So tell us a little bit about your football story. One of my favorite parts of the show is kind of hearing everybody's story and their journey in the great game of football. So let us know, Coach.
I got a very long high school coaching experience. I started coaching high school football in 2001, just as an assistant, a defensive back assistant coach at the high school level, and then kind of worked my way up the ladder, kind of doing everything possible, being a DN's coach, a linebacker coach, a receiver coach, kind of doing the position thing. And then I moved to a coordinator position 3 or 4 years into my young career. And then I became a head coach at a pretty young age of 29 years old for a school called Hoquiam up in Washington, and try to turn that program around. The first year we went 2-7. By the time I left there, we went 11-1. So had a pretty good substantial growth there. In a 6-year career. And then I went off to a school called Yelm High School, which is also in Washington. And I took a program that was going from, had a lot of 5-5 years, and kind of knew some connections there. So I ended up moving there and spent 12 years there and turned that school into a powerhouse. And I believe they're still rolling up in Washington. So I've been a head coach for 16, 17 years, and I made a journey down to Arizona where I'm going to retire with my wife. And my kids are getting older, and so we're going to be down here, and I'm helping out Stev. I'm theoretically his associate head coach down here, and being his right-hand man, just being a gopher, doing whatever he needs. Stev's a great coach. He's a great play caller, and I'm just helping out Gilbert in any way that I can.
Coach, before we hop into the topic, I would be remiss if I didn't ask this question, because I've talked to coaches about this. You talked about taking over the first school 2-7 to 11-1. I think when you do certain things the right way, I think taking a school that's been way down to being pretty good is doable in a lot of situations, but you've been able to do what I think is probably the most difficult, and is taken even an average school to great or a below average school to great. That climb from good to great is really difficult, something we're still trying to work on here. So talk to me a little bit about that. What are some key factors in that process, do you think?
I think it starts with the adults that you have on board. I think they have to be relationship first. and most importantly, the adults that you have in have to buy in. You expect so much out of kids all the time. You have to expect that from the adults too. And so when you find the right adults that are willing to go all in, our relationship first, I think you can dive into the X's and O's after that. But it's basically about, building a foundation that can overlap itself. It's not like one step after another. It's more of like a spiraling effect. Sometimes you're going to go have some downs, and a lot of times at the end of the day, you want to look at the program that you had and like, did we spiral upward? Was there a constant growth model in place with the adults in the program and with the athletes that are coming into the program? And it takes so much work by so many people. Obviously, the athletes that are the ones that win the game, but it's the athletes, the parents, the coaches. I mean, there's so many things involved in getting that upward trend year after year. And then once you're at the top, I mean, being able to sustain that kind of success is incredibly difficult. I think that's the hardest thing to do. And again, it takes a village to be able to do that. You just can't do it by yourself.
Love it, Coach. Like I said, I kind of learned about you, messing around in the Glacier Vault there, seeing they always got some cool system stuff. I have watched a ton of that stuff, got a lot of ideas, and I came across the Zone 10 stuff. Really enjoyed watching that on Glacier, so I figured what better guy to have on as a guest. So before you get into the concept, tell us a little bit about where the Zone 10 came from. And for those of us that are completely don't know what we're talking about here, maybe give us not the in-deep version, but what exactly is the Zone 10?
Well, the Zone 10 is basically a philosophy on a couple of things. Number one is dividing the field into spaces, into 10 different zones, identifying the defense and how they play within those zones, identifying the weaknesses of a defense, because schematically every defense has some kind of weakness somewhere. So at first, when you're learning about Zone 10, is you got to identify like, okay, where is schematically their weaknesses at, and what zone does that fall into? And then secondly is like, most teams have a weakness somewhere, whether that's because of the play caller or whether that's because of the athlete themselves. And so if you can tune into like, okay, where is schematically their weakness? And number two, where is their personnel weakness or their play calling weakness? And number three, how do we get our best athlete to that spot and able to get him the ball in that area, whether that's running the ball, passing the ball, etc. So that's kind of the schematics and the philosophy behind Zone 10. And then so I stole like portions of the wing T, portions of the air raid, and it's like the good thing about the wing T is like their philosophy is, well, if that play didn't work, that means the tackler was in the right spot at the right time, so then they go to here. So there's a progression to, well, this play didn't work, now we go to this play. So there's a progression to it. And with the air raid, it's about finding athletes' spaces to play in and getting the ball in those spaces. And so it's a combination of knowing where to look, where to put your eyes, putting your athletes in those spaces, and allowing your athletes to play football in open space, right? And getting them the ball in places where the defense isn't as strong as they should be, I guess.
I love that about it, Coach. And I think, believe it or not, I think there's definitely some similarities, not in the offense itself, but a lot of similarities in the air raid and the wing T. I know a lot of wing T guys that they'll memorize the defense and they'll say, who made the tackle? And exactly like you're saying, if this guy made the tackle on sweep, well, then we should come back to trap or belly or
right.
What have you, or
right.
boot. And a lot of the same philosophies kind of Mike Leach talked about in the air raid when he was building that out. So I'm going to shut up now, and we're going to listen to you kind of take us through a concept here in the Zone 10.
Okay, yeah, so I have some film here, and I wanted to show, one of the base concepts that we would put in like the first week, maybe even the first day, is what we call a wheel concept. And, if we're just talking about the entire play itself, this would be tray right open, 60 wheel. Tray right open being the formation, 60 being the protection, and the play itself called wheel. And so what we're trying to do here in the Zone 10 is to get the defense to manipulate into what we want. And so this particular play, when we go into 3-by-1 on a hash, we're anticipating the defense going into a 1-high defense. So if they're in a 2-high originally, one of those players is going to roll down. And there's different things, different tags we can put on if like, okay, we're trying to get them into a 1-high and they don't, right? So there's different tags we can add. But let's just say for teaching's sake, they do what we think they're going to do. And so what we do from there, and I put these little notes in here so that if anybody's listening or watching, they can kind of take a picture of it. First, you're getting the defense into a one-high situation. Once they've done that, the quarterback and the offensive coordinator has the pre-snap reads as you have man coverage on one side or zone coverage on the other side, which means that if you look down here on this one receiver side, if they're in a one-high man concept, we're going to identify this and go one-on-one with this player. We think he's good enough to beat their defense. We're going to go with that, right? But if they're not in a man coverage situation one high, that means they're probably in cover three, because this is high school stuff. So if they're in one high, it's either man or cover three, right? They could change things, but let's just talk about basics there. Once we identify if it's man or zone, they're going to identify the protection. So the quarterback identifies a protection. We're going to go 60, which for us, that would mean we're going to roll out. It's going to be a roll-out protection, a slide protection up front to the wide side of the field or the zone side. Okay, and the reason we do that is because there's a couple reasons. This particular year with this QB, he ended up throwing 29 touchdowns with 2 picks. And the reason we do a rollout is because we're trying to get to the space and the zones of 3, 6, and 9 as fast as we can without tipping our shoulders to where the ball's going to go. And so if we roll out our QB, it's really hard to pick off a QB when his shoulders don't identify where the ball's going. And so so rather than sit him in the pocket and let the defense kind of read where his shoulders are, if we can get him running, it really makes it difficult on a defensive player to pick that ball off, okay? So that's why we're going to sprint out and roll out. And so after we do that, we always make sure the QB has his eyes in the right direction, okay? So where his eyes going to go on this particular wheel concept? His eyes are going to go to the first overhang defender to the sideline, and that's what we call our snag defender, okay? So that's going to be this player right here. So the concept itself is we want players to be in zone 3, which is at the bottom here, zone 6, which is anywhere between 10 and 20 yards in the middle here, and then zone 9, which is the deep route, okay, which is deep down the sideline. So we have our zones divided by landmarks. And so our inside receiver here is going to run what we call a bubble route to get in his zone. Our outside receiver is going to run what we call a dig route or a coral route to get into that middle zone. And then our inside receiver is going to run a wheel route to get to the deep zone. And so rather than reading short to high or high to low, we tell our quarterback to read directly in the middle, and then his peripheral vision will tell him what's open. Okay, so the snag defender happens to be the guy that's going to be in that middle zone. And so as we do this, as we watch our slide, so as I'm watching this play, I'm going to identify a few things. Okay, first is the protection right? Okay, so our line is going to slide to the right, which they do. Okay, our running back is going to reach to the right. He has the end man on the line of scrimmage or anything back, so if there's no one to block, he's going to peek back, make sure nobody's peeking back. And then our QB's depth is going to be 8 to 10 yards. And the reason why we want him to 8 to 10 yards is when he throws and releases the ball, we want him running towards his target. Okay, that way the ball is nice and fast. It gets there on a line, and he's running towards the receiver. Okay, so all those things are happening first. And this is after he's identified it's not man coverage, because if it was man coverage, he'd see that this guy was either pressed or in a catch man position, but what he sees that he has an underneath player and an over top player. So we're going to go to the other side. And so this backside receiver is taught to come across the field, try to get into the QB's lane of vision in case something breaks down for the QB. Okay, so then going back to the QB. QB's going to roll out. He's going to identify his hanging defender, okay, and identify where he's going. As soon as the identification happens, these zones begin to open up. And so we can see the hanging defender attacked zone 3, which left zone 6 open up right behind him, as our wheel route is still attacking the deep zone 9, which is pushing this defender back into his zone. Okay, so as soon as the quarterback identifies that, he's going to get the athlete the ball in space, and he's going to let it rip. Okay. Just give you a picture of what that looks like. Okay, so if I go to this next play, it's the same concept, but now we're going to the quarterback's left. it's going to be the same thing. He's going to identify whether or not it's zone or man. If it's man coverage, he's going to go to the 1 receiver side. If it's zone, he's going to go to the 3 receiver side and still read the zone concept. Okay, what I like about this running back is he has no pressure on the front side, peeks to his backside, and picks up the leaking defensive line. And another thing I like about the slide protection is regardless of the blitz, as you can see, it's a 5-man pressure here, they can't get through the windows. And so it doesn't really matter to the pass concept because we should have everybody picked up. Okay, now going to the pass concept, again, our QB's got to be incredibly disciplined with his eyes. He's got to get his eyes to the snag. The snag takes the low zone again. And so that means we're looking to throw it right above him to the dig. Quarterback finds him, and the athlete just makes play with his feet. Kind of hard to see.
A little bit about that dig route, because your guy's running that route. He's really doing a good job sitting in space. How do you guys communicate that?
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll give them landmarks, right? So we'll say, okay, you have 3-step. We'll say we got a 3-step post, and after your 5th step going into the post, sit down and find space. And so again, we have landmarks for them, but we don't want them to be robotic. And so if they're sitting down and nothing's happening, find the open space. And he knows the quarterback's rolling towards the sideline, so generally the open space is going to be back towards the sideline. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, take the post, 5th step, sit down. If the quarterback's still rolling out, looking for space, kind of work yourself back to the sideline. So again, picking up the pressure, slide protection, quarterback gets his depth. Okay, so that way he's out of the pressure. He doesn't feel any pressure. He can sense it, but it's not in his face. Okay, I think I have a good example here coming up where the corner actually jumped what we call the dig route, and we throw the wheel over the top. Okay, this is another example where the snag concept was really patient. He decided not to take the low zone and kind of just stayed in what defense coordinators will say hook to curl area. But quarterback was just patient enough to wait for it to open. Again, try not to be robotic, find space, and wait for it and be patient. Okay, and this is what it would look like. This is a play where we knew this team was always in a 2 high and they were going to roll to a 1 high. We always knew that, and so, but this is where a corner bites on the dig, which opens up the wheel. And if you expect a free safety to cover the wheel, quarterback really underthrew this ball, but if you expect a free safety to cover a wheel, it's just not going to happen. Free safety happened to get there because it was not a very good football, but the concept's the same, right? So this is like bread and butter. Get them into a 1 high, read man to zone. If it's zone, attack the zone to the sideline. Quarterback has a rollout so the DBs can't read his shoulders. Run towards the line of scrimmage as you throw. It's going to create more velocity. It's going to be less likely read and picked off. And we're just layering the zones so we can attack. It's like the old school flood. Okay, so now as you progress through the game of football and as you're teaching through spring ball or the fall, you're like, okay, what if they don't roll to a 1 high? What if that puts yourselves, in the way that you tag things is, well, what if they aren't in a 1 high and they stay in a 2 high? Well, rather than take this bubble route and turn them into a bubble route, run them down the seam and occupy that safety. And that allows the dig to stay open. Okay, so then rather than run a bubble, we occupy the 2 high safeties. And if you look at the other side of this, and I know this is rather deep into a game and into the season, but we're occupying this backside safety by putting the running back in this slot right here. And so we're going to occupy 2 over 2. So there's 2 receivers here, and there's 2 DBs here. Okay, and that identifies us, well, they're going to stay in a 2 high. Well, the way that we beat that is make this safety stay here as we run the concept here, and it allows this dig route to be open. And he'll find space. There's no way that this guy can cover that if he takes that flat.
Well, especially targets to the wide side of the field. That's a lot of space to cover.
Correct. And here's another, it's kind of dark, but here's another situation where, like, that team that was once one high, so this is that team I just showed you. They were one high, and they're like, screw it, we can't stop that play in one high. Let's go to two high, see how it works out. We identify that, put a slot out there to keep these guys, run the same concept, keep these guys occupied, attack the safety with this guy, and then run the same concept with the dig and the wheel with those two, so that way that quarterback's eyes don't have to change. So if the quarterback's eyes don't have to change and most of the routes are the same, it really puts a strain on the defense. And so it really makes it tough for them to stop the concept regardless if they're two high or one high. With just a small tag of putting that number 3 receiver on the post. And so this would be a springtime thing, when you can use drones in the spring. This is when we're teaching it. We're like, okay, they refuse to get out of too high. Occupy those two DBs with those two. Make that safety do something. This is just a situation where the safety screwed up and the quarterback saw it. But this is our teaching progression. This is how you teach it. This is how you teach the quarterback's eyes to get right. This is how you teach the quarterback to say, okay, in this particular scenario, the snag concept's over here, okay? Coach changed it to, rather than being a wheel, we're going to occupy a safety that way, but my eyes stay the same, right? And if there's a hot pressure, if this is the hot player we're reading hot off, we're going to throw that ball right there right away. But that's like at a later time, right? So the quarterback just happens to read the safety come down and just hits him over the top. So we have all sorts of...
Are you putting that in the play call, or can he make that adjustment if they, you got something you didn't anticipate? Are you doing that, or is the player converting that bubble to a seam?
It always depended on the quarterback. The quarterback himself, we always had, if we in a perfect world, the quarterback would put it himself. And there are times where, not necessarily this quarterback, but the quarterback I just showed you would have this hot route in there immediately, because we just knew, and he also knew, like, hey, if they send that guy, I need to get it into that athlete's hand right now. Because in theory, this guy's got the deep third or the over-the-top coverage. So if he does go, we can get that ball in that athlete's hands like right now and let him play one-on-one with that guy, and that's a win for us, right? And so in the springtime, we'll teach all of that. And the same goes for if it is man coverage and we want to throw the wheel route, we can. And so that one concept from spring ball in June, and I'm just showing you how it goes all the way into, this is our state championship game 3 years ago. We're still using the exact same concept all the way until game 14, and teams are still struggling to cover it because it's so sound that all we're doing is attacking spaces and where we think you're not going to be and where your defense is weak at. And so in this particular case, again, we feel like they're going to have two safeties or two DBs. Here's one, here's two. They refuse to go into a one high, so we're going to try to occupy those two, okay, keep them out of the picture. We're going to try to send this guy up the middle and occupy that safety, and then do our basically mid and high zone on the front side. And so even in the state championship game, we're still using the same concepts to get the athletes the ball in space, right? And so for our kids, they've run that concept 1,000 times by the time we've gotten to game 14. And so that's just an example. These are just examples of that one concept and how you can just add a small little tag to it when the defense doesn't do what you want them to do.
Coach, I absolutely love it. Like I said, I am definitely going to try to get you back on in the off season when we can dive into some more stuff. That was absolutely fantastic. Little tweak to that one concept, and you certainly showed how versatile it is in the zone 10. I really, like I said, enjoyed watching all those videos and certainly enjoyed this today. So thank you very much, and I wish continued success to the Gilbert Tigers this year, and we'll see everybody next time for another edition of the Blue and Gold Gridiron Show.
All right, thank you, sir. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Coach.
Yes, sir.